be long. 1967, and my mom and dad are still married today. They've been married 52 years, bless their hearts. And they were married in like August or whatever, and I was born the next May. So, and there was many, many times that I prayed for them two to get a divorce. They both used liquid dope. That's part of my, I was about 25, 26 years old before I figured out everybody didn't drink every day because they did at our house. Up until my daddy was about my age now, he drank a fifth of Chivas Regal Scotch every other night all my life, and anybody can drink a fifth of that shit and get up and go to work next day as a functional drunk in my mind. But anyway, that's his story. For the most part, they carried on with their bullshit or whatever, but I was taken care of. I don't have any brothers or sisters, other than some verbal abuse and just the normal abuse that a kid goes through when people around them are using and they're being taken care of by them. That was really about the only abuse that I suffered. After doing some investigation on down the road, after getting clean, I came to the realization that, number one, I didn't come with a manual, and number two, they were doing the best they could with what they had going on right that minute, and number three, my perception's still pretty fucked up even today. Okay. So I went to high school. I did everything that I could that my folks would let me do. My dad is an attorney still today in South Georgia and Vidalia. He was never one of these. I didn't get everything I wanted. I got everything I needed, and I got some things that I wanted. Like I can remember getting in the 9th grade. Well, my buddies some of them was playing in band, and I wanted to play football too. And he said, "No, you're gonna do one or the other." So I chose sports, and I did that in high school. I did anything I could though to get out of the house, because at my house, my dad would drink. My mom, she was kind of a binge drinker. She'd go 3 or 4 days and everything be hunky dory, and then she'd get on the natural light or whatever. The Miller Lite was her deal, and then she'd go into a just straight out blitzkrieg for a couple of days, and it'd be just straight up hell raising going on, and she'd end up sailing off on him, and he'd slap her around and all. He didn't ever really beat her, but she didn't come through all that unscathed either. And at one point, I hated him for that. Walking into my 4th step, starting off, that was my biggest resentment, was the way my dad treated my mom. My sponsor quickly pointed out to me that, this wasn't my dad's 4th step, it was my 4th step. But anyway, so as I made it through high school, I did decent in school, before I got to using real hard. I was, I could read something, just about repeat 75% of it. I didn't have no problem in school. I could do all the work they were putting in front of me. I got into University of Georgia. Like I say, I went up there. That was my first time away from home, to where I could, do whatever I wanted to. And by then, I'd been using every day for about 2 years. By the time I was 16, I had a way to go. I guess the first time I smoked weed, I was about 14. I don't know when I drank my first beer. Got no idea. That's really when I count my using starting. But so by the time I got to college, I was using something every day. Well, it took me, like I said, about 4 quarters to get kicked out of there on academic probation. My parents gave me the option to go to a smaller school. I wasn't having it. Fuck you. By then I was selling dope. Of course, I was still my best customer. That was just a game. I'd buy $500 worth of dope, and might sell 200 worth, and I'd still be in the hole $300, and you name whatever the substance was, that's what it was. And well, after I got kicked out of school, didn't take the police there. You start bringing 1,000 hits of LSD into a little county like Toombs County. It didn't take long. The dope dealers all knew where it was coming from. The next thing you know, the damn GBI is talking to my dad, who's a criminal attorney down there. So it didn't take long to figure out where the dope was coming from. And so needless to say, they never really got me for anything major, but I started getting locked up. Started getting locked up for DUI and public drunk, disturbing the peace. And I screwed around in 94, I think. Yeah, it was 94. I got caught for sale of violation of Georgia Controlled Substance Act, sale of marijuana to a GBI. And I got the First Offenders Act. The whole time I'm on probation, I was using the whole time. Probation officer, I showed up when I was supposed to. I paid him the money, and I was living that lie. I had a woman that, I usually tell this, that I really didn't have relationships. I took hostages. I wanted a woman that I could drink around, but not anybody that used drugs, because I didn't want to share my drugs, And so the girl I was seeing at that time or whatever, she's like, you need to quit smoking weed. Okay, fine, I'm done with it. And of course I didn't quit shit. Anyway, I made it through that probation, and we ended up splitting up, and I got locked up again, got busted down in the trap with a damn can with residue on the top of it and a dime bag of weed in the glove box. And because of who I was, they mysteriously lost the can, and they charged me with the dime bag and DUI. And of course, she and I had split up. Well, then I screwed around. I got another DUI and another possession within about 90 days. And and I was right there in that. But the first one, my probation officer shows up the next morning after they locked me up, and he says, I just terminated your damn probation, you asshole. And he said, you be in my office Monday morning. And I did, and so we started all over again. Well, they sent me to I talked them into sending me to a diversion center down in Waycross. I went down there, worked 2 jobs, walked out the door about $4,500, because all that shit was misdemeanor stuff, And of course, at that time, the state of Georgia would give you this stuff to read. You can sit there in your room by yourself, and that was your drug treatment. And, and like I say, I walked back out the door. Hell, I used every day at the trailer plant. I walked in the door, and they said, on your second positive test for marijuana, you'll lose your pass for good while you're here. And I'm like, don't nobody want to see my ass anyway. Hell, I never quit smoking, And so I, the consequences for my using continued to get worse, and despite, against all odds, I wasn't going to quit using. And so this is like 95. And by now, what's going on in all this, like I say, I got removed from college in 88, so I've been out in the working world for about 7 years. By now, I've probably had about 70 jobs. Some of them I got run off of, some of them I just didn't show up, whatever, you name it. My biggest enabler was my mom. She didn't want me, out there running in the streets. Of course, her giving me money didn't stop any of that shit. But anyway, through this whole process, I was having real relationship issues with everybody. And I just want to say that now because, as we come back, I'm going to point that out. Anyway, drug of choice, yours and more. I liked it strong and regular. I was all about my relationship with you as long as you had a sack of dope and you was willing to share. As soon as that run out, it was over with us. And anyway, there was a lady over there in a little town called Oak Park, Georgia, and if any of y'all from South Georgia, they used to be notorious for moonshine, and weed dealing and all that stuff. Well, anyway, she was one of my pot dealers, and her son was one of my best crack smoking buddies. And, you know, and she told me, she said, boy, you need to fucking help. And so she ended up being the one who carried me to Statesboro long-term treatment in 2002. And I made it to Gainesville. I stayed there about 85 days. I ended up using on the job, you know, and of course at that time all I'd done smoked a little bit of weed and drank about half a quart of beer or something like that. Well, that Friday night it was on, and of course I was flat broke before it was midnight. I was broke. You know, everything that everyone in the fellowship had told me came true right there in just a matter of minutes. Because in the back of my mind, you know, I just needed to quit using that hard dope. You know, but the fact of the matter is I can't use anything successfully. Anything that changes the way I feel is a drug. Just like this right here. I still struggle with eating. You know, I go to the doctor, my diabetes levels are up. He gives me some medicine. The diabetes numbers go down. Hell, I just double down. I eat 2 cheeseburgers then. You know, and I mean, well, I mean, that's the seriousness of what this shit that I got really is. Anyway, I left treatment. The World Convention was in 2003 in March in Atlanta. And I left the weekend that convention started. And left treatment, and I lived over there in Gainesville behind the boarding house of Checkers for about 8-9 months. And I made it back in October 19th, 2003 is my clean date. And I say that because I know there's a lot of y'all that are just like me. Y'all been doing this for a little while, but I also know there's some of y'all in here that, you know, some version of a higher power has pointed you to this meeting. And, you know, and I would like to say whether you got a damn 2 years left, 2 days left, 20 days left, take the time, use it to your advantage. All that shit's going to still be right there just as soon as you get finished. I've seen a pile of people come and go, and, you know, very, very, very few of them make it without having relationships within these rooms. I can't swear to God that you ain't got to work the steps and you can't go out there and never use again, but I can promise you your level of serenity is going to be very limited at best. And I know this because when I went into treatment, I got a sponsor. I did some step work and some self-evaluation of my behavior. And, you know, so anyway, here's what changed by me going into long-term treatment. First off, my living arrangements changed. You know, finally, I didn't have to worry about there being no dope in the house. I didn't have to worry about no woman bringing no dope in the house because I wasn't living with one. I didn't have to worry about nobody else coming in there with a bag of dope for the most part. And, you know, that was huge. So then all I had to do was stay clean from the time I left the house in the morning till I came back in the evening, and there wasn't no dope involved. The next thing that happened, I got a sponsor. I'm on my 4th sponsor now. Alan T, me and Alan went through the first 3 steps together. Alan decided he needed to go get high. I got no idea where he's at, if he's alive, nothing. Mark P was my 2nd sponsor. We went through the steps completely together. Me and him are still in limited contact. I consider him to be a friend, and I respect him. David S., some of y'all know him, and then John's my sponsor now. Me and John actually went to treatment the same year. I went the first time when I was like 20 years old at John's place. He went to the commitment center in Athens. He stayed clean. I didn't. He got 29 years. You know, I couldn't stop, wouldn't stop. So anyway, sponsorship was huge, you know, and, you know, it ain't about somebody telling me what I need to do. It's about me being accountable, you know. Because, see, it's like when we first came over here, Rocky knew the preacher that used to be here, and he's one of us. He don't really understand how we work because he marches to the tune that these folks drum, and that shit worked for him. But he asked us to come in here, and he was a friend of ours. But see, I could go up here and get the last $20 out of his pocket, even though I'm going straight over there to get a hit. That's why with us, we'll carry you, we'll buy you some clothes, we'll give you a ride, hell, we'll give you a job. But I ain't giving you no cash. That shit ain't happening. And these preachers and there's other folks don't understand that. But, you be addict like George, I will steal your shit. When I'm using, I will steal your shit. Anyway, one other thing that really changed in that process was I got a home group. My first home group was the We're Here to Help group in Gainesville. It was up there at Laurelwood. That was the first meeting I went into when I got to Gainesville. Then, of course, this group right here, the Life Worth Living down there, and we started bumping heads down here about the meeting sheets getting signed. And I left here over that. As much as some of y'all, sometimes Rocky and Brandon aggravate the shit out of me and I want to cuss them out and all that, but I ain't got a right to tell anyone that they're not welcome in this room, as long as they're not disturbing the meeting. And, anyway, and I ended up back at the We're Here to Help group in Gainesville. And, now we're out in Rabbit Town. The hospital run us off from over there. But anyway, it wasn't because of me, guys. It was. But, and I'll tell y'all this, I don't always see eye to eye with everybody, but I got to be okay with the group's conscience. I ain't got to like it, but I got to be okay with it. And sometimes I got to let y'all bust y'all's heads on the damn pavement so you can learn that, that, hey, he wasn't lying to me. But anyway, I got some stuff written out here about the steps and all. So that was 2003. I left the way up. Excuse me. I left treatment. Well, ain't but one of us here besides me. So, September 2005, 23 months and a week. And I did not graduate that treatment facility, but we all kind of mutually decided we needed to part ways. And I'm gonna tell you, I was scared to death because I left a place where I had 40-something guys I was in treatment with, plus the network of the graduates there, to dive out there and go into Narcotics Anonymous, which I knew some people, but it's just, it ain't the same thing. And I would say this, if you're new here, find somebody to get clean with, to get a relationship with. If y'all are in treatment together, don't use them, find somebody else. And the reason I say that is so you're not co-signing each other's bullshit. There's one old sick bastard I know that runs around in some of these meetings. This one thing's pretty true. He calls Narcotics Anonymous the house of broken toys. And don't mean that we don't recover. We do recover. Good shit happens here. However, it's just like my wife. I can't sponsor my wife. She can't sponsor me. We might can identify issues in each other, but we can't work each other's program. And it's the same thing with our running buddies and all that. And me and Rocky and Brandon are the only 3 people at the same meeting for 12 months, 3 times a week, and that's the only 3 meetings we're going to. And eventually we're going to get sick off of each other's shit. And that's why I go to different meetings and other places where I can meet other people with different perspectives. At the end of the day, when I get confused or in the group, my home group gets in disarray about how something needs to go, we try to refer back to the literature. We admitted we were powerless over our addiction. Our lives become unmanageable. I thought I had that step down coming in the door because I used it for years. Oh, I'm an addict. Excuse me for breaking in your house and stealing that $100 and your pistol and all that other shit that I did because I'm a junkie. I got to have it. let me ride one more time. And but it was pointed out to me that, you know, in fact, I'm a you know, egomaniac with an inferiority complex. One minute I think I'm King Kong and I got the right to kick your back door down, and the next minute it's old poor pitiful me. You know, hopefully through working that step, we find hope that gives us something positive to look for and move towards. We can admit our need for help as we begin to share in our common welfare. And just like the young lady read in the clarity statement, the difference in Narcotics Anonymous 12 steps is that 2-letter word, we. And, you know, I've been fortunate enough to go to 3 world conventions. You know, you get out there with 20,000 people reading the 12 steps like that, and they all say we. That's what brings me back to Narcotics Anonymous. It's all inclusive. Because as much as I can go over here and listen to the pastor share a message, I mean, I can listen to a Jewish priest, whatever, I can find recovery today when my perception is where it needs to be. Okay, it ain't always there. David will tell you, it is not always there. But that all-inclusive thing, that we don't care about what you use, how much you use, you know, what you have, what you ain't got. We just care about your problem. And it's not specific to pot or crack or heroin or whatever it is. That's the we of the program. We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. You know, we surrender to the things we cannot change through our own power. It's a way to get on with our lives. We seek a higher power of our own understanding that becomes our ultimate guide of source and source of strength. And, you know, that's basically, you know, my convictions ain't going to send you to hell, and your salvations ain't going to get me to heaven. Sorry. You know, I want y'all to get there one day too. Right now, heaven for me was this morning. My grandson was at my house, and we got to watch cartoons and play building blocks in the floor. Anyway, step 3, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. That is a daily choice that I make, and some days I don't do it. I try to I try to run stuff. I try to control everything. Acceptance allows evasion and denial to give way to reality and peace. With the care of God, we are granted the power to welcome new people and new ideas in our life. And one thing that means to me, I got a buddy, that old Barefoot Billy up there in the edge of South Carolina. I'd call up and I'd be raising hell, and I'd say, that dang Joe, he's doing this, he's doing that. Billy'd say, well, you want to be happy or right? And I'd be like, damn it, Billy, I want to be happy and right. He said, no, that's not the way it works. And basically that lets me, let you be you. Because it's not my place to judge you. It's my place to keep the door open, make the coffee, make sure there's some damn literature over here for sale, and make sure that there ain't nobody hitting on the newcomers out here or selling no dope in the parking lot. And, and if there's some bullshit going on out there, I'll be the first one to call the police to you. Because if you think you're screwing up what I got over your bullshit, shit ain't happening. That guy that does that court meeting up there every couple of weeks, whatever, that judge, see, I know him. I see him all the time. And, my integrity's my integrity. I had one guy that used to work for me that had been through that program, and another guy that was in there, and he signed my fucking name to a paper one day and sent it to him. I said, I ought to call him up and get your ass locked up. And he looked at me, well, why would you? I said, why the fuck would you do this? Knowing the problem that guy could get into for having that signed paper, and me for, because now he's putting my shit out there now. Might not seem like much, but, if you've ever seen any of them get broke down for having a damn forged document in there, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, 4th step, made a search and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. I did a 4th step at about 12, 13 months clean with my sponsor. Everybody that I know that has not done a 4-step with their sponsor to the best of their ability, either dodged it, didn't do it, chose somebody, I knew a couple says, oh, it just says you need to do it with a person. It don't have to be with your sponsor because I don't trust my sponsor. Well, number one, you ain't did 1, 2, and 3 very damn good. And number two, you got the wrong damn sponsor. If you don't trust them, the shit ain't working, And in all reality, I was fortunate. I went through the steps in that flat book when my sponsor did 1, 2, and 3. By the time we got to 4, instead of it being this huge hurdle, because there was some shit in there I didn't want to talk about. One of the things I had to talk about, one time I hit my mom. I didn't want to share that shit, but I did it. It was the truth, and I had some shame and guilt over it. And and it's just like up here doing this. As much as I'm a businessman, I've been clean for a hot minute. None of y'all know my mom, know anything about any of that. I need to share it because I'm sure I'm not the only person in this room that's ever done that. I was using and I was young and I did something stupid. I've hit significant others, with intent to hurt them. And it's just wrong. And that was the biggest thing about the 4-step for me in the program, because coming out on the other side actually having some morals. And my morals ain't got to be your morals. But, I had to change the way that I viewed women. I had to change the way that I treated you. Otherwise, there was no sense in being here. I had countless relationships. When I went through Statesboro in 1989 or whatever, the lady asked me, it's a little young black girl, it was one of the counselors there, and so she's doing this interview because, obviously I come in there on 14 different drugs and all this stuff. I was homeless, had nowhere to go, so they're giving me their little interview to see if I qualify to go to long-term treatment. And she's like, well, how many long-term relationships have you been in? And we got to counting up, and it was like 12 or 13. And and this was at 22 years old, 21 years old. She was like, oh my God. And I'm like, well, a couple of them were the same girl, just different times. And, but that goes back to what we were talking about me sucking at relationship. Because when I got in that 4-step and I started writing out all those resentments I had against you, and you, most of them were females or involved a female. And there was one common thread to all these people, my dumb ass. And, when I first got here, I would tell you that I believed in Jesus and I really wasn't all that bad, and the only person I was hurting was me, and all this shit. But when I started putting it down on paper, then all of a sudden it was, uh-oh. And that's why the 9th step is where the 9th step is. Because part of them people that I ended up, in my mind, thinking I need to go back and tell Billy Joe that I had sex with his wife while he was at work that day, my sponsor was like, no, hell you don't. They still together, dumbass. You need to do something different. You probably weren't that good any damn way. She was giving it to everybody. You wasn't the only motherfucker. And I know that sounds rough, but, there's some things I don't need to do. Like if I owe somebody a half ounce of meth, and they're still selling meth, I probably don't need to fuck with them. They can mark that shit up to the game. Anyway, that would be between you and your sponsor. Anyway, but on the 4th step, it says honesty is the ability to match up our insides with our outsides. And I was told the quick skinny of it is when I can get what I want to match up with what I need to do on a daily as close as possible, then that shit's hitting on all 8 cylinders. I'm running that drag strip full performance, if y'all know what that means. Anyway, all right. We admitted to God, to ourselves, and another human being, your sponsor, Brandon. Another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. And it says open-mindedness is our bridge to the experience of others, is a passageway out of loneliness into the life of the Spirit. And I will say this about the fourth and fifth step. If y'all do not have a sponsor and you have not done any step work with anyone, it will give you a level of freedom that you could never have imagined. Anyway, step 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Willingness to try is the beginning of doing our part. The long of it, I came out with like 25 items or whatever. My sponsor and I came to grips with I'm a selfish ass, and it pretty well motivated all of those anyway. I'm still selfish. It's not as bad as what it once was. It's a lot better. I'm a lot more polished at letting you see how unselfish I'm being when I'm trying to manipulate you today. We humbly ask Him to remove our shortcomings. Faith is the evidence of our trust in God. I was told this was like feeding a horse. If I want God to take those biscuits away or driving fast or whatever, I need to be willing to give it up like this with an open, even a curved hand. Because if you feed a horse like this, the horse will bite you because his teeth are rounded. But if I do it like this and I get he is not going to pry my fingers off of my bullshit. He'll let me bask in my shit just as long as I want to deal with it. And trust me, this is coming from someone who, to some degree plays with this shit within the program. I'm standing here telling you, I was told early on that if I did 1 through 9 to the best of my ability with a sponsor, and I did 10, 11, and 12 on the regular, I didn't have to go back to 4. And I have never been back to step 4. Not to say I don't need to, okay? But if I do a 10th step every day, it is virtually impossible for me to carry an open resentment. If I'm being honest with myself and the God of my understanding and my sponsor, I'm not telling you I do that. I'm just telling you that's what, how the program's designed. And then step 8 is we made a list of all persons we had harmed. This came from my 4th step. My sponsor helped me make this list. Being willing to make amends to them all. Doesn't say to make amends yet. It says just becoming willing. And that's something that I really had to take a look at. I got to step 9. Everything started flowing pretty good then. Some of the amends went real quick. Some of them not so much. I was probably 5 or 6 years clean before I ever looked my dad in the eye and tried to have that conversation. I'm sorry I stole your shit. I'm sorry I disrespected you. All the shit that I did all those years. And my dad just stopped me cold in my tracks. He said, boy, I made a bunch of mistakes. You made a bunch of mistakes. I'm proud of you. Keep doing what you're doing. And I was like, you really? And that was it. So, and all this time I was all fucking thinking, word to death, I don't want to deal with this guy. My old man, he didn't play the radio. He's an attorney, but he was a cop in the Army. His daddy was a cop. All his uncles was cops. Of course, they were real proud of me. I turned out to be the town crackhead, But anyway, and then I kind of gave you a quick on the 10 steps about taking that daily inventory. And I will say, I'm trying to be with all these young people in here. I got an app on my phone with the meeting schedule on it. I've been able to watch these people develop this into what it is. When I first got clean, I went all the way out to Kansas, drove 3,000 miles to 2,200 miles, whatever it was, in Kansas where I was working at. Took me 3 weeks to find a meeting. Now, I had phone numbers. I was doing what I was supposed to. But by the same token, I get out there, I'm in a motel room, I get a letter from the state of Georgia where I'd just taken a test to get my electrical license. Says, Dear Mr. Argo, due to your we have received notice from the test administrator that you passed I took a master's exam for electrical contracting. you passed your exam. But due to your criminal history, we have serious concerns before issuing you license. Now, it says before issuing you license. Y'all all heard that. That ain't what I read. I read, no, George, fuck you, low-life crackhead. That's what I heard. So I'm out here in Kansas with all these dual diagnosed, they cross-addicted and all this, because I'm looking for differences, not similarities. I'm not where I'm supposed to be in between my ears. I'm trying to figure out how fucked up y'all are and why I got a right to use today. Even though my sponsor done told me 3 or 4 years ago when we went through all these amends lists that I got no right to ever use ever again, ever. Not to catch a buzz, because we done identified the fact that shit wasn't working anymore anyway, So anyway, I'm sitting out there gambling with all that. Well, finally, after 3 weeks, they give me a date with the psychologist. And this lady says, well, I see you've been locked up for drugs. I see you've been to long-term treatment. You still clean. How did you do that? And I said, well, I went to treatment. I got a sponsor. I worked some steps. I've been going to meetings while I'm out here in Kansas. The next day I had a fucking badge. I worked for 7 weeks out there, came back home with a knot to choke a damn small horse, And that was all because I held on just long enough and I fuck it all up. For whatever reason, I had just enough want to stay clean more than I wanted to fuck it all up. And anyway, we moved on to step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him. And unconditional love is given where we sense our spirit in another human being. And see, that's one I still struggle with because way back when, before I ever remember ever using, I know y'all have heard this. If you've been in any kind of treatment or whatever, you've heard somebody tell you that addicts are more sensitive than other people. And you're, as a man, I'm supposed to be like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. I was just having fun. Just went too far. But, like I told you, my dad told me when we did the little amends thing, I'm proud of you. And I never did hear that. I don't know how many times he told me he loved me and that I'm proud of you, but I didn't hear that shit. I took a job before I went out to Kansas when they built the prison over here in Gainesville. And every day I'd see them guys come out here and go to a work detail. I've done that shit before. And I'm sitting out there one day and he says, yeah, this lawyer friend of his used to live down in Lyons, lives down in Brunswick now. He called and he asked about me. And I'm standing there talking to my dad. I got on my damn steel-toed boots, hard hat, safety glasses. I'm decked out to the max. And he says, yeah, Tommy asked about you. And I was just telling him how proud I was of him. And he sat there in about 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And I just told him how proud I was. He said it 3 or 4 times. And by the time we got done, I'm just sitting there with tears pouring out because I never heard it. Now, I want to say to justify my bullshit that he never said it. I don't know whether he did or not, but I never heard it. And that's the whole thing. See, my perception to get the blessings has got to be where they need to be. And, I never did understand when I would pray to God why, the preacher says God speaks to him. Why ain't he talking to me? I must be fucked up. God don't love me, And I mean, this has been going on before I ever started using, and I was just pouring gasoline on that crap. So anyway, that was a big moment at about 5 years clean. I realized that my perception of the way things were was still really screwed up, even though I hadn't used dope in quite some time. Anyway, and of course, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps, we tried to carry this message to addicts to practice these principles in all our affairs. I've been coffee maker. I've spilled coffee out of a damn 40-cup pot. Had coffee out here 4 or 5 times, I know. We brought literature when it first started. It was me and Chip and Jeremy and that other little short dude. Jeremy's in the joint right now, and that was one that wouldn't do that 4-step. Love you to death, good guy, but just wasn't ready. I became GSR A of the We're Here to Help group, then GSR, then I was GSR of this group, then I became secretary of the area. Did that for 8 or 9 months. I did H&I, vice chair. I've been on spirituality as the key like 4 different times. Then I started working on the regional convention. I still do it. This morning, somebody texted me at about 7 o'clock this morning, what you been doing or what are you doing? He thought he was going to be slick and get his dog out before I could even answer the text. And I'd been up since 5 o'clock doing stuff on the computer working for the convention. But see, and I'm not telling you that to give myself a pat on the back. I'm telling you because it's either do that or get out there doing that. That shit that run me in here so long ago. I didn't tell you, I've been to jail in this state 35 times. And, the reason I know that is because when it got time for me to take that test, I had to go get a background check from the cop station. So I go up there to Dawson County, and the lady says, okay, that'll be $8. I'm like, shit, I ain't got my $10. Okay, here you go. And I give it to her. She says, okay, hang on. And he's stamping. She's stamping. Okay, here you go. Here's your $2. Thank you. And, of course, getting a little bit of gratitude because I'm deep in the jail, and I get to walk right back out of this motherfucker. But it was 8 pages long, so I felt like I got my money's worth, And but that's a true story. And and that was, I know 5 or 6 of them I didn't even remember. Had no idea that were on my record. 2 of them were felonies. Through this process, I'm trying to get my gun rights back after all these years. My dad's getting old. He's got a bunch of guns. Some of them is my granddaddy's. My son's not ready yet. And through this process, my dad got me a pardon through the state without even me asking for it. And this was in 2013, so I'd already had 10 years clean. It didn't happen overnight. That relationship has come back full circle. I got 2 children that I don't have a very good relationship. One of them's up there working at Eagles right now because me and him can't get along. And he don't want to do nothing but sit on his ass. So he's got him an $8.50 an hour job sitting up there fucking off. And if that's the way you got to have it, that's the way you got to. It is wrong for me to deny you pain. If you have to have pain, you can have it. I could use him working with us, but he don't want that. So my daughter lives in Vade with her mother. She doesn't want anything to do with me. That's not really all her fault. All I can do is be clean. If the phone rings, I got the phone right here, and I'm not fucking up. I can get in that truck right there and go to Vade right now if she needs me. My wife's daughter loves me. I gave her away last month at her wedding. My wife's son loves me. His daddy's dead. He needs something. He wants some advice. He calls me. Oh, they didn't like me when we first moved over there. I can promise you. But now they realize that I love their mom, and I treat their mom with respect, and I don't abuse her. And that shit that I got here, I didn't, the preacher was saying it all them years ago, but I wasn't hearing it. He was preaching, you're going to hell, you're going to hell, you're going to hell, but he was also saying there's some salvation out there, but I couldn't hear it. But see, I forget better than I remember. That's why I have to come to a meeting every day. That's why I believe God put me in Narcotics Anonymous. I know some people came to church, got saved, they never fucking touched nothing again. That ain't my story, and it ain't my experience. And if I walked over there this morning at 10 o'clock in the morning and says, I want to smoke some crack today, preacher, they'd have run me out of there. Get the cops over here. Service. If you can find it in your heart, once you once you get to the point that you and your sponsor agree it's time to do some service, I promise you, you will gain much more than you ever lose doing service for the fellowship. Whether it's just making coffee at your home group, doing something at the area, whatever, it has increased my network tenfold every time I've done it. Real quick, now I should get the hell out of here. You know, the 12 steps are so I don't commit homicide. The traditions are, the 12 steps are so I don't commit suicide, and the traditions are so I don't commit homicide. That's something I learned in long-term treatment. See, I was in there for 23 months. When I lived on Stallworth Street, I had 17 guys in me. And I was practicing the tradition before I ever made it to a group conscience. I promise you. And the 12 steps of NA were all inclusive, and the traditions, you know, are to protect the fellowship. I've learned that there is a God and it is not me. I do want to say this to y'all, that if I would have written down on a piece of paper everything I wanted to get out of this journey at 6 months clean, just sat down with a piece of paper, blank piece of paper, and wrote down everything I wanted out of being clean, and that would have been all God gave me, I would have screwed myself, because I got some pretty good shit today. You know, my relationship with my wife ain't perfect. It's the best it's ever been. You know, first girl I dated after I got out of treatment, she went back to Kentucky, started using again. She's dead. The last girl I dated before I came into treatment, she got out of the joint, went back home, went to using again. She's dead. You know, two of my best running buddies while I was in treatment, dead. One of them's that boy over there at Ingalls' his sister's daddy. You know, me and him had a common girlfriend there or whatever with children. They come into his trailer, beat the hell out of him, set the trailer on fire. 3 or 4 days later, they took him off life support. He died. So, you know, every time I'm trolling Facebook for that baby to say something so I can like it, say I love you. You know, and that's because, you know, that's what I need to be doing today. Let's see. And this is the last one. One thing I did today while I was doing all those CDs, I listened to about 10 different speakers today. And this one guy said, never give up on anyone. And he started crying. He was at the World Convention. He had about 25 years. He couldn't believe he's standing up there in front of 10, 12,000 people telling his story. Said, but, you know, it's impossible for me to gauge your desire to stay clean. That's why we don't have the right to tell anyone they're not welcome here. Back in the 90s, I went to meetings and I came in there and I was dual diagnosed and all that shit because I was fresh 30 days out of treatment. And this old man told me, they got meetings for people like you and it ain't here. And I fought with people from that fellowship for a long time over that. I finally did a little bit of writing about it, and, you know, it ain't my problem anymore. But, the message in Narcotics Anonymous is still the same. Any addict can stop using drugs, lose the desire to use, or find a new way to live. Our message of hope is hope, and the promise is freedom from active addiction. That's straight from the basic text. This book right here is the old person's volume of the basic text. It's the large print. It's what happens when you get old and you stay clean a little while and you got diabetes you can't hardly see. But I heard one addict say that this is God's love letter to the addict. It's all about me, our fellowship. Our literature is written by addicts, for addicts. This is my home. I really didn't have anywhere else to go. And after being here for a little while, hell, why would I want to leave? Thank y'all for letting me share. Thank you.